This is The Herd. Wherever you may be and however you may be listening, iHeartRadio, Fox Sports Radio, and FS1 live in Los Angeles. It is great to have you here today. Alex Curry is joining me. Joy Taylor is on her way to give a commencement speech and get an honorary humanities doctorate from Barry University in Miami. So it is great to have Alex in today. Although these NBA playoffs now, it's pretty clear we can kind of see the conference finals getting into shape right now.
There's a lot. First of all, happy Cinco de Mayo.
Same to you.
We were talking during the break about that. And yeah, Joy will come back, Dr. Joy.
Dr. Joy.
Dr. Joy.
So let's start with this. There's obviously recency bias is a real thing. Like, we all fall in love with what's happening now. This is the greatest day. It's the greatest basketball player. So recency bias, I fall prey to it all the time. I try not to, but it's, you get emotionally connected, viscerally connected to all these like athletes and teams and games and March Madness and the playoffs. But it was about 5 years ago in his prime that we were saying James Harden was better than Kobe. Analytically, he was the greatest, most efficient scoring guard of all time. But there was a truth serum about James Harden, that he had the ball in his hands so often, and he initiated so much contact, he was exhausted by the end of games. He was a defensive liability. Is Luka Doncic just becoming the Dallas version, the bigger version of James Harden? Always has the ball, initiates a ton of contact. That takes its toll on you over a game. Plays a lot of minutes. Everything goes through him. And he scores 35 to 38 points effortlessly. And then by the end of the game, he's gassed and they're picking on him. Chris Paul was seeking him out at the end of the game. We looked it up this morning. Chris Paul went after Luka 50 times as the screen defender. They were seeking him out. That's what teams did to James Harden. Ryan Russillo, podcaster, came on, my buddy, yesterday, talked about Luka's style and how he has the ball so often. There's so many minutes. He's in every moment of the game. It wears guys out.
They are too Luka reliant. We've had an incredible run of statistical performances over a regular season, like historic stuff, right? The Westbrook season in 17, some of these Harden seasons. But I kept coming back to the point of, like, these guys have the basketball more than anyone's ever had it regularly in history. So I went through usage rates, the top 20 usage rates in NBA history. And the playoff track record is terrible for these single-season players with the highest usage rates in the history of the game. And a lot of them are very recent years. The only player to ever get to a finals was Allen Iverson.
Mavericks only had two other players that even got the double figures, and one just had 11. So it says a lot when you score as much as Luka. When you're this centrifugal force, you know what his plus minus was? Not to go all statty and stuff. Minus 28. It's James Harden. It's so much contact, so much ball usage, so much initiating everything. By the end of the game, you're just a liability. And by the way, as great as he's been, like Harden, he didn't come into the season in shape, did Luka. You also need some self-awareness as a star. He's got to figure out how to work with others. He and Porzingis hated each other. Make it work. You also need Luka to do something that it's quite possible international stars don't feel comfortable doing. Getting on the phone and recruiting a player. LeBron does it. KD does it. Steph does it. That's the NBA model. Now, international players, Dirk didn't want to do it. Luka didn't want to do it. Sometimes international players don't feel as comfortable doing that. But that's what Kawhi did with Paul George. And Kawhi doesn't even talk. He got out of his comfort zone and put his recruiting hat on. And he got Paul George to L.A. You've read those stories. You were as surprised as I was. So that's a responsibility, too, in the NBA. Self-awareness, getting along with others, getting on the phone and recruiting players. And I'll say this. You start looking at the West now. This all Luka all the time thing, it's got a pretty low ceiling in the playoffs. Phoenix is pretty young and going nowhere. Denver gets Jamal Murray back. The Clippers and Warriors are going nowhere. Memphis and Minnesota are young, made the playoffs, and feisty. And the Pelicans with Zion back. Watch out. So these teams have a second star. I know Luka's great. He's got to get along with people. I'm not saying Porzingis is any day at the beach. Got to get along with people. Got to get on the phone and recruit people. All Luka all the time, I'm watching it. It's James Harden. Now, their games may not be identical, but they initiate a ton of contact. They play a ton of minutes. And, both a little weight, don't always feel like they're in the best shape. Jason Kidd after the game.
Yeah, he had a great game, but no one else showed. So, we got to get other guys, shooting the ball better. We can't win with just him out there scoring 30 a night. Not this time of the year. And we're playing the best team in the league.
Yeah, you can't win with him not getting on the phone either. It's the new NBA model. He's got to get along with people. Speaking of James Harden. So, listen, you're all watching what I'm watching. I watched every minute of both games last night. Like, James Harden is now a 3. And I like James Harden. And I thought Philadelphia won the trade. I mean, they had to get Ben Simmons out of town. Draft picks? Who gives a rip? They're late first rounders. Who cares? Philadelphia is going to be very good. Those picks are irrelevant. There's 2 first rounders, one next year and one 5 years from now. Seth Curry's a nice rotational player. And Andre Drummond, no championships are won or lost by him. So I still love what Philadelphia did. But here's the issue with Harden. He's eligible for a 4-year contract, an extension, for about $230 million, potentially $270. Okay, say this out loud for a second. You know my theory on this. Whenever you're not sure what to do, just say it out loud and let it sit. Declining enigmatic player. Let's pay him a fortune. Does it sound like a great idea? Now, I think Daryl Morey loves Harden. And Daryl Morey brought him over, and he gave up a lot. So my guess is they'll pay him. I don't think it's the answer. I'd move off Harden. And I loved the deal to get him. But here's the 3 reasons why I'd move off him. Number 1, what did you really lose in the trade? Ben Simmons, a backup center, irrelevant draft picks, and a rotational player. You don't want to give up anything. By getting Simmons out of the room, you won the trade. At least Harden plays. What do you have last night? 20 points? He plays. Okay, number 2 is, look at the construct of your team. Without Harden, it's fantastic. You have a superstar. How many of those in the league? 6? You have an emerging star in Maxey. That kid is a rocket. You have an excellent 3 in athletic Tobias Harris, can get you 20 points in any night. And you have an elite defender in Thibault. So you've got size, defense, superstar, complementary pieces. Without James Harden. Number 3 is, you are watching these NBA playoffs like I am. What do Miami, Milwaukee, Golden State, and Phoenix, the 4 best teams arguably left, have? It's not a center. Golden State didn't have a great center. What do they all have? Great chemistry. Amazing chemistry. Tell me a James Harden team that's ever had great chemistry. He's his own guy, and I like him. He's his own dude, and I like him. It's hard to build great chemistry when James Harden is your, second guy. All right? So we're witnessing what's winning in these playoffs. Chemistry. Miami doesn't even have a go-to star. I mean, Jimmy Butler's not a closer. Great chemistry. Milwaukee's number 2 scorer is out. Still have great chemistry. I guess my point is, I love the Sixers core. Without Harden. Superstar, emerging number 2 star. I mean, Maxey right now is their second best player. Tobias Harris, better than average 3. Thibault's one of the top 5 defenders in the league. What the Sixers need is a bench, which you're not going to get if you sign Harden, and flexibility. That's what's always been great about the Warriors. They've always got flexibility to go get an Andrew Wiggins or go get a KD or go get an Andre Iguodala. They have flexibility. Smart people. The Warriors are full of smart people. Smart people like flexibility. Smart people don't want to get trapped. You sign James Harden, you're trapped. You're going to have no bench. average flexibility. I think and maybe you can move Tobias Harris. Maybe that's the answer. And I think they will sign him. But listen, athletes that don't take meticulous care of their bodies, i.e. Harden, you want to lock yourself into 4 or 5 more years of that? Like injured players and closing nightclub players. I'm not locking myself in for 5 years. I'd love to lock myself into a good bench for 5 years, flexibility for 5 years. But as I'm watching Philadelphia lose to Miami, what they needed last night was James to be James. He can't beat guys off the dribble. He can't get around guys. I said this, Cam Newton, Harden, Westbrook. 32, 33 years old. That's the number for a pro athlete. Any neglect, you go off a cliff. I mean, like half a season. You're not the same player. I mean, we woke up and Cam's like MVP, declining. Oh, he can't play. I mean, Westbrook's like, oh, he's a star, triple-double. Oh, he's difficult. Oh, can't play. Harden can play, but they need him, and he doesn't have another gear. So I think it's not only interesting now what's happening to Harden, but what do you do if you're Philadelphia? I like so much about this team, and I still think they can win this series, but they need Embiid. But I don't know if I want to lock myself into this stuff. I'm looking around these playoffs.